At first, everything seemed fine. Elena and I had what many would call an ideal life: a loving marriage, a beautiful daughter named Sophia, and a home filled with comfort and stability. I worked hard to ensure Elena and Sophia never lacked anything. Elena didn't need to work, and she enjoyed a life of luxury with yoga classes, spa days, and frequent shopping trips. I thought we were happy. But over time, I noticed subtle changes. Elena grew distant, her criticisms of me increasing. I wasn't attentive enough, I didn't help around the house enough, I wasn't exciting anymore. It was always something. It felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. I tried to talk to her, but every attempt was brushed off with dismissive remarks. She insisted I was imagining things, that she was just stressed. Still, something about her behavior didn't sit right with me. Then one night, while scrolling through her social media, I saw it. She had posted a photo with a man named Greg, her yoga instructor. At first glance, it seemed innocent, just a group photo from their class. But her body language with him was off. Too comfortable, too familiar. The seed of doubt had already been planted, but this made it bloom into full-blown suspicion. From there, I started paying closer attention. She was always on her phone, her laugh too carefree during certain text conversations. She started staying out later and dressing up more. My gut told me something was happening, but I needed proof. One night, while she was asleep, I checked her phone. That's when I saw the texts. Flirty, intimate, undeniable proof that she was having an affair with Greg. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I decided to bide my time and plan my response. Confronting her directly wouldn't bring satisfaction. She thrived on her reputation, always wanting to be the center of attention, adored by her friends and social circle. If she was going to betray me, she needed to feel the consequences in the one place that mattered most to her, her image. That's when I decided on my plan. I knew her well enough to exploit her vanity. It wouldn't just be revenge. It would be poetic justice. Once I had the proof, I knew confronting Elena wouldn't solve anything. She wasn't the type to admit guilt. She'd just lie, twist things around, and make me feel crazy for even questioning her. So, I decided to hit her where it would hurt the most: her reputation. Elena had always been obsessed with her image. She thrived on attention, especially at high-profile events, always eager to be seen as the perfect wife and mother. She lived for the spotlight, whether it was charity galas, social media, or just being admired by our circle of friends. To everyone else, she seemed like the perfect woman. But I knew the truth. Elena wanted to be adored, and she didn't care who she had to hurt to get it. I knew how to use this against her. I contacted Vanessa, Elena's best friend, who'd always been eager to gossip and loved to be in the know. I suggested a publicity stunt that would boost Elena's status at an upcoming charity gala. The plan was simple: make her stand out by posting something daring, something that would get people talking and show her off as carefree and rebellious. Vanessa was all in, excited by the idea of making Elena even more popular. The next day, I casually floated the idea to Elena. I told her, why not post something fun on Instagram? Maybe a few shots with Greg from yoga. You two look great together. It'll get people talking in a good way. Elena, eager to boost her image, jumped at the idea without hesitation. She posted the photos almost immediately, playful shots of her and Greg laughing together. The photos were flirty but subtle, the kind of thing that would seem innocent to her followers but leave a lot of room for speculation. Once the photos were up, I moved to the next step: getting the story out. I knew the perfect person for that: a gossip blogger I'd followed for years. Someone who could turn a small detail into a viral sensation. I anonymously tipped them off, feeding them the story about Elena's wild side and how she'd been carrying on a public affair with Greg. I didn't directly mention the photos, but I made sure to hint at her risking everything for attention. The blogger took the bait. Within hours, the story spread like wildfire, on gossip sites, social media, everywhere. The narrative was clear. Elena was a woman willing to sacrifice everything for the thrill of being in the spotlight. It was exactly what I wanted. The photos, once harmless fun, now made her look like she was losing control of her life. Her friends started to talk, her colleagues took notice, and soon enough, the invites to high-profile events stopped coming. Elena's reputation, which had been so carefully curated, started to crumble in front of her. I hadn't confronted her directly. Instead, I let her own vanity and need for attention bring her down. It didn't take long for everything to fall apart. The story spread faster than I expected. Elena's once perfect image began to crumble as the gossip took hold. Her friends, colleagues, and followers on social media started to turn on her. What had seemed like playful photos with Greg quickly became evidence of her affair. People she'd once trusted were now mocking her. "Thought you were better than this," one comment read. Others started unfollowing her, making snide remarks. Then came the worst blow. Her invitation to the charity gala was rescinded. The event organizers didn't want negative publicity surrounding her, and just like that, Elena was cut from the guest list. It was the one event she'd been looking forward to, and it stung more than I think she expected. Her perfect life was slipping away, and the idea that her social circle was rejecting her, publicly, was too much. She didn't understand why this was happening. At first, she thought the attention was a good thing. She called me, frantic, trying to explain the situation. "David, you don't get it. Greg and I are just friends, nothing happened," but I wasn't buying it. I looked at her, feeling the weight of everything I'd been through. "Really? After all this, you think people are buying that?" Her face went red. She had no comeback, just more excuses, more lies. She was caught, scrambling to explain herself, but the damage was already done. The gossip didn't die down. The blogger I'd tipped off kept milking the story, turning Elena from the fun-loving wife into the woman who threw everything away for attention. The viral photos of her with Greg were everywhere, with harsh commentary attached. No matter how much she tried to explain or deny it, the truth was out there. What hurt her most wasn't the public fallout, it was the way her friends reacted. People she'd once considered close were distancing themselves, making quiet judgments. Elena was left to face the consequences, and no one was willing to listen to her excuses anymore. She tried to salvage what was left of her reputation, but it was hopeless. Her carefully constructed life was in tatters, and she realized, too late, that it was all her doing. The reality hit harder than any confrontation could. But I felt no sympathy. As the days went on, Elena's world became more and more unrecognizable. Her once flawless social media presence became a battleground. Every post, every picture, every comment was scrutinized. The once glamorous life she'd worked so hard to build, the one she'd prided herself on, was slipping through her fingers. And she was powerless to stop it. It didn't help that her attempts to salvage her reputation only made things worse. She posted more photos, trying to appear carefree, but they only drew more attention to her desperation. The likes and comments she had once gotten in abundance began to dwindle, replaced by passive-aggressive remarks from her so-called friends. Her phone was constantly buzzing with angry texts from people who had once worshipped her. Everyone was suddenly an expert on her life, on her marriage, on her character. It wasn't just the public backlash that hurt, it was the quiet judgment from her inner circle. People she had trusted for years now spoke to her with cold indifference. Some of her close friends, the ones who had always been at her side, started to back off. Vanessa, the one who'd helped me orchestrate this, couldn't even look her in the eye anymore. Elena knew what was happening but refused to acknowledge it. She'd always been the queen of her social circle, the woman everyone admired. Now, she was the punchline. She tried to drag me into it, of course. She begged me to help her fix things. "David, please, we can fix this. It's just a misunderstanding," she said one night, her voice shaky. "I never meant for any of this to happen. But I was done. I didn't want to fix anything. I wasn't interested in salvaging what was left of a marriage built on lies and betrayal. Watching her suffer, watching her finally get a taste of what she'd done to me, it felt right. She didn't deserve my sympathy. The worst part, though? She had no idea I'd orchestrated it all. She was too caught up in her own mess to realize that the reason it had all exploded was because of her own obsession with status. She went on damage control mode. Apologies, tear-filled explanations. More social media posts trying to cover up the damage. She even tried to get close to Sophia, but that didn't work either. Sophia was old enough to see the cracks in Elena's behavior, and the more she saw, the more she pulled away. Then one evening, Elena came to me, the last person she should have been coming to. "David, I messed up," she said, standing in the living room, her face pale. "I didn't think. I didn't think it would go this far. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain. Just a deep, hollow emptiness. Yeah, well, this is the reality now, I said. You made your choices. She stood there, a mess of regret and confusion, but I wasn't going to comfort her. I wasn't going to tell her everything would be okay. It wasn't. And it never would be again. It was almost like watching a slow-motion car crash. Elena was spiraling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Every day, she tried something new. Apologies, explanations, more pleas for forgiveness. But nothing worked. People weren't listening anymore. Her social circle, once so loyal, had turned on her. There was no going back. I'd been silent through most of it, letting her stew in the mess she'd created. But it wasn't just the affair that had broken us. It was her arrogance, her disregard for our marriage, and how she believed her public image was more important than anything real. I had to admit, I'd become numb to her. One evening, a few weeks after everything had blown up, she walked into the living room where I was sitting, her eyes swollen from crying. She had that same look on her face, guilt mixed with desperation. "David, please," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've ruined everything. I didn't think it would turn into this. I was stupid. I never meant to hurt you." I could see how torn she was, but I couldn't bring myself to care. How many times had I begged her to see what she was doing? How many times had I watched her choose her image over our family, over me? This wasn't just about Greg or the affair anymore. This was about the years of betrayal, of her pretending everything was perfect while I was ignored, pushed aside, and disrespected. I took a deep breath, looking at her like I was seeing a stranger. "You think saying sorry is going to fix this? You think you can just cry and expect me to forget everything?" She flinched, but I couldn't stop now. I knew something was off, Elena. I saw it. But I stayed quiet. I stayed because I wanted to believe we could fix it. But you didn't care about fixing anything. You cared about keeping up your little perfect life. You thought you could do whatever you wanted, that nothing would catch up to you. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. "You were right," I said, my voice cold. "You didn't think it would go this far. And that's the problem. You never thought about the consequences. You were too busy playing a part." She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. "No, Elena. This isn't about excuses. You destroyed our marriage. You tore apart everything we had, for what? To feel special, to be admired by strangers? You used me, you used Sophia, and now you're left with nothing but your reputation." Her face crumpled as the weight of my words hit her. It wasn't that I wanted her to suffer, but I needed her to understand what she'd done. She'd taken everything, our trust, our family, our future, and thrown it all away for the sake of an image. "I don't know who you are anymore," I told her, standing up and walking toward the door. "But I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the excuses, and the pretending." Elena didn't try to stop me. She couldn't. The truth had finally sunk in. I left that night, and I never looked back. The first few days after I left, everything felt off. The house was quiet, empty, like a shell. I didn't miss Elena, at least not in the way I thought I would. What I missed was the idea of us, of the family we once were before everything went wrong. I missed the routine, the small moments, even the arguments. But I couldn't go back. I was done. I spent more time with Sophia. At first, she was quiet, unsure about what was happening. She wasn't naive though. She'd seen the tension, heard the arguments, and sensed the lies. She had her own questions, and I wasn't about to shield her from the truth. I wasn't going to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. One afternoon, while we sat on the porch, Sophia asked me, "Dad, are you going to be okay?" I looked at her, my daughter, the one constant through all of this, and felt a mix of love and sorrow. "Yeah," I said, "I'll be okay. I just want to make sure you're okay." Her face softened. That moment, despite the mess everything was in, gave me peace. Sophia was stronger than I realized. She deserved the truth, and I wasn't going to lie to her, even though it hurt. I kept my distance from Elena. She tried calling, leaving voicemails. But I ignored her. There was no need for more apologies or explanations. I wasn't interested in hearing about her changes or how sorry she was. Those words were empty now. She had her chance to fix things, and she chose to betray me instead. But one evening, I caught myself thinking about her, about who she used to be. I remembered her laugh, how she'd light up a room, the way she thought she owned everything. It was a strange, bittersweet ache, like mourning a version of life that never was. But I couldn't linger on it. Not when I had to move forward. Elena had nothing left now. The charity events, the likes, the friends she'd chased, they were all gone. The facade she'd built over the years had crumbled, and she was left with nothing but her own reflection. The people who'd once praised her were gone, and now she was isolated, facing the consequences of her choices. I had no sympathy left for her. She wasn't my problem anymore. As for me, I was starting over. It wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. No more pretending, no more lies. Every day, I took small steps to rebuild my life. Something real this time, something I could hold on to. And every day, I knew I was doing the right thing. Weeks passed, and Elena's life was falling apart. She tried to keep up appearances, posting photos of herself looking happy and carefree, but it only made her look more desperate. People weren't fooled. The truth was out, and nothing she did could change it. Her obsession with status had backfired, and now she was nothing more than a subject of ridicule. Sophia, on the other hand, was adjusting better than I expected. She didn't seem as devastated as I thought she would be. There were still questions, still moments of sadness, but it was like she was finally free of the tension. I made sure she knew it wasn't her fault. We were both going to be okay, even if it took time. Then one day, Elena showed up at the house. I hadn't heard from her in a while, and seeing her standing at the door, looking fragile and lost, threw me off. "David, please," she said, her voice shaky. "We need to talk. I can't do this anymore." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to let her back in. But I also didn't want to be the kind of person who just shut the door in her face, so I nodded for her to come inside. She sat down in the living room, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. I could tell she was rehearsing what she was about to say. "David, I know what I did was wrong. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you or Sophia." Her words were hollow, empty of the sincerity they once had. I didn't need more apologies. She had destroyed everything, and now, when it was too late, she wanted to fix it. "I don't want your apologies, Elena," I said flatly. "Not anymore. You had plenty of chances to make it right. You didn't." She flinched, but I didn't back down. She had crossed the line too many times. The woman I once loved was gone, and no amount of regret could bring her back. "Please," she whispered, "I've changed. I swear. I'll do anything to fix this." I shook my head. "It's too late for that. I'm not interested in fixing what's broken. Not with you." The silence was thick, and Elena's face showed the realization that I was done. She had lost me for good. "I know I messed up," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "I just thought I could have everything." There it was, the truth. She wanted it all. She thought she could keep her affair, her family, and her image without consequence. But now, she had nothing. "I didn't just lose you, David," she whispered. "I lost everything." I nodded, but there was no satisfaction in it. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt hollow. She had no one to blame but herself, and that was the hardest part. Watching her crumble was painful, but I didn't care anymore. She had made her bed. "Goodbye, Elena," I said, walking toward the door. I couldn't stay in that room with her anymore. The woman I had known was gone, and I wasn't going to waste any more of my life on her. Life after I left Elena wasn't easy, but it was simpler. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. There were no more fights, no more lies, no more pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. It wasn't about getting revenge anymore. It was about finding peace. Sophia and I settled into a new routine. I made sure to spend as much time with her as possible, making up for lost moments. There were still tough days, times when she asked questions about Elena that I didn't know how to answer. "Why is Mom so sad?" she'd ask. I couldn't lie, but I also didn't want to give her more to carry. It's not your fault, I'd tell her. People make choices, and sometimes those choices hurt. But we'll be okay. I promise. Sophia had her moments of confusion, but I saw how strong she was. I think she had a sense that I wasn't coming back, that things were done between me and Elena. She didn't ask about Elena much after the first few weeks, though. It was almost like she knew that the woman who'd been her mother for so long wasn't the same anymore. The distance was growing, and there was no going back. Elena kept trying to contact me, but I ignored her. Her messages were full of self-pity, begging for a second chance, for forgiveness. The same rehearsed lines, the same pleas. I had heard it all before. One afternoon, a few months after everything had blown up, I got a text from her. It was different this time. She wasn't begging for another chance. Instead, it was a simple message. I'm sorry. For everything. I hope one day you can forgive me. I stared at the screen for a while, feeling the weight of it. It wasn't an apology that made me feel better. It just reminded me of how much I had been through. The woman who had once been my partner, the one I had trusted, was gone. But I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Elena had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. As for me, I was starting to rebuild. It wasn't easy, but every day felt like progress. I worked on myself, spent time doing things I hadn't been able to do in years, things I had put off while trying to fix a marriage that was broken beyond repair. I had my own life to focus on now, and for the first time in a long time that felt good. The one thing I had learned from all of this was that you can't fix someone else. You can't change people who aren't willing to change themselves. I had tried, 4 years, to fix Elena, to make her see what was important. But she never did. And that was her mistake. Not mine. Life moved on. Slowly, I was learning to live without Elena. The quiet was a relief. No more waiting for the next betrayal or the next lie. I was free. Then one day, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but something made me pick up. "Hello," I said. There was a long pause. Then I heard Elena's voice. Different, softer, almost broken. "David. It's me." I felt a twist in my stomach. My first instinct was to hang up, but something stopped me. Part of me still remembered the good moments, the life we had before everything fell apart. "What do you want, Elena?" I asked, my voice flat, guarded. I need to talk." "Please," she said, sounding fragile. I didn't know what she could say that would make a difference. "What do you need to say?" There was a long silence before she spoke again. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but everything's falling apart. My life is a mess." I didn't know how to respond. She had created this mess, and I wasn't responsible for fixing it. But part of me, despite everything, felt some sympathy. "Elena, you made your choices. I can't fix them for you," I said, trying to keep things brief. She took a deep breath. "I don't expect you to fix anything. I need you to know that I regret everything. I've lost so much. My career, my friends, my reputation. And I've lost you. I don't think I can ever fix that." Her words hit harder than I expected. I had heard her apologize before, but this time, it felt different. This time, she wasn't talking about just her image. She was talking about her real losses. "I've been selfish," she continued, her voice full of regret. "I didn't think about what I was doing to you and Sophia. I was so caught up in wanting more. I lost sight of what really mattered. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to." She had to face this herself. Maybe hearing it from me wouldn't change anything, but at least she was starting to see the damage she had caused. "I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself," she whispered. I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't promise her anything. I had moved on. "I don't know what to say, Elena," was all I could manage. "I just wanted you to know that," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "Goodbye." The call ended, and I sat there, staring at the phone. A part of me wanted to feel relief, but instead, I just felt empty. Elena was acknowledging her mistakes, but it didn't undo the past. It didn't bring back the trust or the love we once had. I had moved on. She hadn't. But there was nothing more to say. After Elena's call, things felt different. It wasn't closure, but it was something. Some kind of shift. I wasn't angry anymore. The anger had given way to a quiet kind of peace. The kind you find when you realize you don't have to fight for something that's already gone. I wasn't looking back anymore. I focused on Sophia, my work, my life. There were moments when I felt lighter, when I smiled without forcing it, when the weight Elena had left on me began to fade. I was moving on, and it felt good. Then one afternoon, Elena showed up at the house. I wasn't expecting her, but I opened the door anyway. She looked different. No makeup, pale, worn out. It wasn't the image she'd tried to present before, but the tired face of someone who had been through too much. "David," she said, voice shaky. "Can we talk?" I wasn't sure I wanted to. I had been making progress without her, but I didn't want to be rude. So, I stepped aside and let her in. We sat in the living room. I didn't know what to say. The air between us was thick with all the years of hurt, the broken promises. I didn't interrupt. I just waited. "I'm sorry," she started, her voice cracking. "For everything. For all the lies. I ruined everything. I can't believe how much I've lost." I didn't say anything. She had her chance, but where was that apology when it mattered? When she was in the middle of it all? "I know I'm too late," she continued. "I know I can't fix it. But I need you to know I regret it. All of it. I was so blinded by what I thought I wanted." I shook my head. The same old story. She was sorry now, but where had that regret been when she was destroying everything? "You can't fix it, Elena," I said firmly. "Not now. Not after everything." She seemed to shrink in front of me. The tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't feel sympathy for her. The woman I once loved was long gone. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Then she stood up and walked to the door. I watched her go. I didn't want to say anything more, but a part of me couldn't let her leave without something final. "Elena," I said quietly. She turned, but only for a moment. "Goodbye." She didn't respond. She just walked out, the door clicking shut behind her. And that was it. The last goodbye. The weeks after Elena's final visit felt like a strange kind of quiet. The tension that had ruled my life for so long was finally gone, replaced by a calm I hadn't known in years. Sophia and I settled into our new routine, and though there were still tough moments, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was no anxiety when my phone rang. No wondering if Elena had somehow found a way back into my life. She had made her choices, and now it was my turn to make mine. One Saturday afternoon, Sophia and I were out for ice cream when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in months. Vanessa. She was with her husband, laughing, completely at ease. It hit me then. Vanessa, the one person Elena had always relied on for support, had been one of the first to turn her back on her when the scandal broke. Vanessa spotted me and smiled awkwardly, like she wasn't sure what to expect. "Hey, David. How's it going?" she asked, sounding almost sheepish. I shrugged, keeping it casual. "Things are good. You know, moving on." There was a long silence between us. Then, after a beat, she spoke again. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, David, for everything. For not being there when you needed me." It was an unexpected apology, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Vanessa had always been close to Elena, and even though she was a good friend of mine too, she hadn't exactly rushed to take my side after everything came out. "It's all right," I said, nodding. "I get it." Vanessa looked down for a moment, like she was trying to find the right words. "I wasn't sure what to do, with everything that happened. But I should have been there. I should have been more supportive." I didn't respond at first. It wasn't like I was mad at her anymore, but I wasn't sure how much we could really fix. Elena had made her bed, and Vanessa had chosen to stand by her. That was something I couldn't forget, even if I could forgive. "I don't need you to fix anything," I said finally. "But I appreciate you saying it." She nodded, and we shared a brief, quiet moment. "Well, if you ever need anything, just let me know," she said, her voice softer now. I smiled faintly. "Thanks. Take care." As I walked away with Sophia, I couldn't help but think about everything that had led me here. The lies, the betrayals, the broken promises. But at the same time, I realized that none of it mattered anymore. I had Sophia, my health, my peace of mind. That was all I needed. I didn't need Elena or Vanessa or anyone else to define me anymore. I was moving on, and that was enough. Months passed, and life started to feel more like it should, calm, steady. Sophia and I were adjusting well, and I was realizing just how much of my life had been swallowed by Elena's drama. I had spent so much time trying to make her happy, trying to fix things that were already broken. Now, I was finally focused on what mattered. Me and Sophia. One evening, I decided to take a walk in the park to clear my head. The weather was nice, a cool breeze making everything feel fresh. I didn't expect to see anyone, but as I rounded a corner, I spotted someone sitting on a bench. It was Claire. Claire was a friend of a friend, someone I'd known for a while but never really talked to much. She was always easy to be around. Calm, down to earth, nothing like Elena's whirlwind of chaos. I hadn't seen her in ages, but she looked up as I approached and smiled. "David," she said, clearly surprised. I smiled back. "Yeah, it's me. Haven't seen you in a while." She patted the bench beside her. "Come sit with me if you're not in a rush. I'd love to catch up." I hesitated but figured why not. I didn't have anything pressing, and it felt good to talk to someone with no strings attached to my past. We talked about light stuff at first. Mutual friends, work, what had been going on. But then Claire turned the conversation more personal. "How've you really been?" she asked. I paused. It wasn't easy to admit the weight I'd been carrying, but something about her quiet, genuine way made it easier. "I've been better," I said. "It's been tough adjusting. After everything, it's strange, you know? Not fighting for something, but finally having peace." Claire nodded. "I get it. Sometimes, we don't realize how much we need peace until we let go of what we thought we couldn't live without." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time trying to hold on, thinking I couldn't live without Elena, but now that I had let go, it was clear. Life was better without the chaos. "It's hard," I admitted, "but I'm figuring it out. Sophia's adjusting and I think maybe this is a good thing in a strange way." Claire smiled softly. "Life gives us what we need, not what we think we want." We sat there in silence for a bit, just letting the moment sink in. It was the first time in a long while I felt like I could just breathe. The weight of the past was still there, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. When we stood up to leave, Claire gave me a friendly hug. "I'm really glad we caught up, David," she said. "You deserve happiness. Don't forget that." As I walked away, I realized that maybe she was right. There was more to life than just surviving it. I had hope again. Hope that there could be something better waiting ahead. The weeks after I ran into Claire felt strangely peaceful. Elena's betrayal, the chaos, it all seemed like a distant memory. Life gives us what we need, not what we think we want. Claire's words kept running through my mind, and I began to see it. Maybe all the heartbreak and confusion had been necessary to get me here, to a life where I wasn't drowning in someone else's mess. Sophia and I were settling into a routine. It wasn't perfect, but it was calm. One evening, as we ate dinner, Sophia asked a question that hit me like a punch. "Dad, are we ever going to see Mom again?" I froze. Sophia hadn't mentioned Elena much lately, but it was clear this question had been eating at her. I wasn't ready for it, not yet. I took a deep breath. "I don't know, sweetie," I said carefully. "Your mom has some things she needs to work through. For now, it's just us." She nodded quietly, but I saw the uncertainty in her eyes. I hated that she had to carry this weight, but there was no easy way to fix it. She was adjusting just like me. That night, when I thought I'd finally get some peace, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Vanessa. My heart sank. I hadn't talked to her since everything went south, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. But something told me to pick up. "David," Vanessa's voice came through, shaky. "I owe you an apology. For everything." I bristled. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. I let Elena manipulate me. I wasn't there for you. And I'm so sorry. She paused before continuing. But you need to know, Elena's a mess. She doesn't know how to fix this. She's losing everything. Friends, family, and you. Her words hit harder than I expected. Part of me was curious. What was she really trying to say? But the rest of me was done. Elena had made her choices. And it wasn't my problem anymore. Vanessa, I said, cutting her off. I appreciate you calling, but I'm moving on. I've got Sophia, and that's all I need. Elena's got to figure out her own mess. There was a pause. Vanessa's voice was quieter now, almost apologetic. I just thought you should know. In case you were wondering. I ended the call, feeling a strange relief. Elena's breakdown wasn't my concern anymore. I had a life to rebuild, a daughter to raise. And in that moment, I realized I was free. No more drama. No more lies. Just peace. The days after Vanessa's call felt like everything was building to something bigger. Elena's custody move had sent my world reeling again. I kept telling myself it was just a tactic. She was desperate, grasping at anything to control the situation. But something in me kept wondering, was she really this desperate? Then, one morning, the storm hit. Sophia had just gone off to school, and I was grabbing a coffee when I noticed a familiar figure standing by my car. Greg. Elena's lover. My blood boiled. What the hell are you doing here? I snapped as I rolled down the window. Greg looked uneasy, pacing slightly before finally meeting my eyes. David, I need to talk to you. About Elena. My first instinct was to roll up the window and drive off. I didn't want anything from him. But something in his voice made me pause. He wasn't the type to reach out unless there was something serious. Spit it out, I said, my voice tight. He took a deep breath. Look, she's spiraling. She's been drinking more, not eating, acting like someone who's completely lost it. And she's going to do something stupid. Something that's going to make everything worse, including the custody case. What kind of stupid? I asked, trying not to lose my temper. But I could feel it rising. Greg hesitated. I don't know exactly, but it's bad. She's thinking of making some public move, something that could turn Sophia's life upside down. You've got to know. I'm just trying to give you a heads up. I didn't know what to say. My stomach twisted. Elena was always calculated, always 2 steps ahead. Now she was desperate, and I didn't know what that meant. But whatever it was about to explode. Thanks for the warning, I muttered, though it felt like a hollow gesture. Greg walked off without saying another word, leaving me standing there with 1,000 questions. What was Elena planning? How far would she go to try and win this battle? I had to protect Sophia, and I couldn't do that if I didn't know what was coming. The next few days were like a waiting game, and the tension was unbearable. Elena's plan was still unclear, but I knew it was coming. And the worst part? I had no idea how far she'd go. Then it happened. I was sitting in my car, waiting for Sophia to finish her extracurriculars, when my phone buzzed. It was a link to a gossip blog. I clicked it without thinking. The headline, Famous Socialite Elena's Shocking Public Scandal. Custody Battle Turns Ugly. I read it in a blur. Elena had gone public with an outrageous claim, accusing me of being an unfit parent, of being emotionally abusive. She had even dragged up old photos and stories about my past mistakes, twisting them into a narrative that made me look like a villain. She made herself the victim, painting a story of a tortured mother trying to save her child from a toxic environment. My heart pounded. This was it. This was her move. She was playing dirty, turning public opinion against me. I didn't waste a second. I called my lawyer. The urgency in my voice was obvious. We need to move fast. Get this shit cleared up. She's trying to destroy me publicly. My lawyer was quick to respond. We'll handle this. But I have to warn you, David, this is a serious attack. You need to be ready for the fallout. I hung up, the weight of the moment crashing down on me. It wasn't just about winning anymore. This was about protecting everything I had. My dignity, my daughter's future. Elena had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to back down. I didn't even wait for the scandal to fully unfold. The next morning, I called a press conference. I wasn't going to let her control this narrative. I needed to be the one to take control of the story before she could finish what she started. At the press conference, I was calm, but there was steel behind my words. The story she's telling isn't true. I've always been there for Sophia. I will not stand by while she destroys our lives. I laid out everything, Elena's affair, her spiraling behavior, the truth behind the custody case. I told the reporters about the damage she had done, the lies she had told. I didn't hold back. The public's response was swift. Support flooded in. The tide started to turn. People saw Elena for what she had become, a woman who'd sacrificed everything for attention, willing to ruin the lives of her own family to feel validated. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. Elena's public reputation shattered. Her supporters vanished. And, as the custody battle continued, the court saw her actions for what they were, desperate and damaging. She lost everything she'd tried to manipulate for. Sophia stayed with me. And Elena? She faded into the background. A few months later, I ran into Vanessa at a cafe. She looked guilty but relieved. I told you she was spiraling, she said softly. I just nodded. I had to protect Sophia. And I had. In the end, that was all that mattered. Life was calm now. No more drama, no more games. Just Sophia and me, making it through each day. The storm had passed, and we were finally free.